does have its own implications.
Let me, Mr. Chandrashekhar, come to you and get you to put on your NASSCOM cap now. We were just talking about the risk that we face on possible legislative action, protectionist move by governments across different countries. You know, we talked about Canada a couple of months ago. The fear was Australia was being more protectionist. The US, of course, continues to be a big cause of concern. How are companies like yours mitigating this risk, and what are the expectations now from the new government at the center? Because the hope is that Mr. Modi, in his bilateral engagements with the US, for instance, when he does visit Washington, is going to take this matter up.
You know, most of the member companies of NASSCOM are actively working towards localizing the workforce. You know, while bulk of the services can be delivered from any global locations, you know, there's also an active program that's going on in most companies to hire locally to mitigate this risk of movement of people across borders. So I think that will have to continue. You know, I think most of the member companies are aware of this, and so we all work towards increasing our local presence year after year.
As far as the cost structure of this business model is concerned, I mean, we've talked about onshoring, offshoring, rare-shoring, near-shoring, all kinds of shoring. What is it going to mean fundamentally as far as the business model is concerned?
No, the cost structure will continue. It's not going to be significantly affected, because whether you hire locally or you move people from one location to another location, you know, you continue to, you need to prepare, you need to be prepared to pay the local prevailing wages. So from a cost point of view, it's not going to be significant. Of course, you know, we'll have to take into account the visa charges and things like that. But other than that, you know, if there is no significant you know, penalty that's being imposed through legal measures, but cost structure would remain the same, whether you hire locally or send people across borders.
Okay. Vineet Nayar, you don't expect a significant change as far as the margins are concerned. You know, we've been used to 20% plus kind of margins as far as the IT sector is concerned. Given the way that this business model seems to be changing, you don't anticipate that we are going to see much larger pressure? And of course, there continue to be issues on volume front, on the pricing front, and so on and so forth.
I think, Shreen, there are 3 points. Number one, this whole legislation was a wake-up call for India or Indian IT, of the fact that you're not in the business of exporting Indians, you're in the business of getting business on a competitive basis with your customers. So the overall cost structure for the customers will go up, and on a competitive scale, Indian IT will continue to be competitive because you're opening nearshore centers. And therefore, I believe that the revenues will go up and margins will remain intact because you will set up the global centers there. That's point one. Point two, for us to expect Modi government to come in and, you know, have this bilateral trade, you have to keep one thing into consideration. At least that's where I stand. Yeah. That's where I take off the IT hat. For India, it is very important to protect some industries. And for India, it is very important for us to have policies which are pro-India rather than global trade. And therefore, when we do a pro-FDI in retail and all that stuff, it is very difficult for us to have a negotiation saying you should open the visa regime. So it will be very difficult for the Modi government, which is trying to encourage more manufacturing.
There will have to be quid pro quo. So you open up retail and we'll pull back a little bit as far as IT and visas.
And the third point, which is very important, the first question you ask is what's the biggest risk? I don't think visa and regulations, those kinds were risk, but Indian IT is pretty smart. I think they've figured that out. I think the risk is of relevance in terms of what Indian IT does for its customer. Is it going to be relevant for future? And that's the question which needs debate.
Okay, we'll address that issue in just a bit. But Debjani, since we are talking about wish lists and we're drawing up demands that the sector has from the government, let me ask you, because, you know, this has been a sector that's been ignored, and rightfully so, and it's been a good thing because it's managed to flourish without being under the government's radar. To my mind, one of the big issues facing not just the IT sector but industry on a whole is this business of retrospective taxation, and the IT industry has also fallen prey to that. So it's really about the ease of doing business as opposed to SOPs from the government.
While the IT services industry has been thriving, the industry that focuses on growing domestic technology adoption has faced a lot of challenges. And if you ask...
Do you see now that being an opportunity given the Modi agenda of digitization, e-governance, broadband Bharat and so on and so forth?
I see it as a time for this industry to reinvent itself. And I think you asked about the biggest risk. To us, the biggest risk is status quo. if the government does not act on the changes that it has promised, not only is it going to impact the industry, but it is going to impact everything else that the government has promised, be it education, be it healthcare, be it getting the 100 smart cities up and running.
In specifics, what would you like them to do?
I think there are two things. Very broadly speaking, one is make it easy to do business in India, because if you are going to focus on the local market, you need to invent and innovate for that local market. And it's extremely difficult today to do that. So make it easy to do business, make it easy to customize solutions for India. And two, have the policies that brings back the focus on growing the domestic technology usage, get the broadband out into the villages, move India from a narrow band country to an actual broadband country. So these are the two really big areas of focus for us.
Mr. Chandrashekhar, now I'm going to get you to put on your former telecom secretary cap, because, you know, we've talked about Broadband Bharat and Broadband for All under the UPA as well. And we've seen, well, you know, to be fair, we've made significant leaps as far as broadband adoption is concerned, but it's not enough. The kind of promises that we're hearing from the government, we would like to believe that it could be executed. What do you think will be the challenges as the government goes out to achieve all of those?
Well, I think one part is the infrastructure part, whether you take the broadband optical fiber network or the rollout of 3G and 4G wireless services. And in fact, the auctions of 4G spectrum and the 700 megahertz band is still some distance away. So that whole set of actions relating to ubiquitous availability of broadband is one enabler. The second is that in terms of the actual ecosystem for content, that's a very key element, and I think that requires several different pieces.
Okay. What would you like the government to do?
Yes. Now, for one, you know, the whole issue of language technologies supporting the proliferation, because for widespread adoption of technology, especially in the rural areas, adoption in the local language is a key enabler.
But that's surely something that industry will have to work on, and not so much the government.
Well, there are two or three areas where government contribution does become important. Obviously, there is a lot that the industry has to do, but especially in terms of research and development and funding research to lead to products and technologies which support the proliferation of language computing. Okay. The second is in terms of the greater adoption, there has to be a fillip to the content creating industry and to the kind of opportunities that are given to the industry.
On that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we return, we continue our conversation on the IT sector's wish list from the Modi government for the Modi budget.